Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast, episode number 48. I have none other than the Dr. Brad Gustafson. Did I
You
say
nailed
that?
it, Jared.
Okay. We talked about a few things before the show, but I forgot to make sure I had the pronunciation of the last name correct there. So, hey, welcome. You are a busy guy. You just got done with one show like 10 minutes ago, and you're hopping on another show here. So, hey, man, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
So I think I can't remember how it worked. Good old Twitter about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Saw this guy, Brad, who had like a ton of followers, was just pumping out awesome content, blogs, podcast, had books. And I was just like, I would love to, and you're just up north, you're in Minnesota. And I mentioned before the show, I was born in the Twin Cities there, born in Minneapolis.
And I'm
So I was like,
jealous how you say Minnesota because like we have an accent up here now, and it's not always like sometimes people give us a hard time about it, but you say it so perfectly. I need to take notes on how you say that.
how did you say it? Yeah, you
So
went
I
over
try
it
to
so
say
quick.
the O fast because that's what people give me a hard time and us a hard time about Minnesota. So I say Minnesota. I just say it as quick as I can.
Now, did you grow up in Minnesota
I
then?
did. I did. Yes.
Okay. So you're a lifelong Minnesotan, I guess you could say. And I only lived there for like 4 years. No, I do go up there. I got family up there, grandparents, cousins, all that. So we go up there all the time. But yeah, the accent I still haven't quite, which I don't know if that's good or a bad thing, but I haven't quite picked up on that. But you're doing some awesome things, and I just can't wait to pick your brain here. And I mentioned before the show, there's a lot of educational podcasts out there. You've got your podcast, which you got great numbers there. You've got a big following. What makes this show a little bit different is we try to focus on just some personal growth ideas. We try not to get too deep in the weeds with the education and more about just the universal truths about leadership and about success. So
Love it, Jared.
So you're the principal at Greenwood Elementary School. You were the principal of the year in 2016 in Minnesota. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Written 2 books, which we'll get into: Renegade Leadership and Reclaiming Our Calling. Podcaster, blogger, everything. So let's just, if you don't mind, kind of the traditional starter here. Tell us about your educational experience, your leadership background, and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. So it all started, Jared, with a super soaker running around my house, like even in high school. And I'm partially kind of kidding, being facetious, but I was always the one at birthday parties who would gravitate towards like, let's have fun and be kids. Or even as I got older, I want to be where the kids are and connect and have fun and enjoy life and learn and do adventures and make stuff, whether it's crafts or playing games and stuff like that. So I think this whole journey started for me just with a deep connection, appreciation for kids and childlike faith and curiosity and things like that. And those are some of the things I think I hope I've still kind of hung on to and retain and try to look for and cultivate in others. And now I get to do this thing called being a principal, which I will say I never saw myself seeking or wanting. Like I was a second grade teacher and I loved it, like loved it. And I was also a high school soccer coach and loved that too. Like soccer was a big part of my life, and just this wasn't even on my radar. And then one day my principal at the time walks into my second grade classroom, hands me a pamphlet to a university or college and says, like, I think her exact words were, I think you'd be good at this. And my visceral internal response was like, am I doing something wrong, or am I not good at teaching? Like, that's what I was thinking. And I think I just said, oh, thank you. Not ever intending to enroll or look into it. But the more, like, I have this other personality trait, it's just kind of being addicted to learning. I just love learning. And it's a very expensive hobby, unless you're doing it on Twitter, right? Which is also very powerful. But at kind of that university college level, just continuing with programs and classes until, lo and behold, you get the credentials, and you realize like sometimes passions grow and emerge, and you start to realize like some of the core things that you believe in and care about in your classroom. Like what if you could help realize those or co-create some of those same things with other people and help them like realize their dreams and visions for kids. So that's in a nutshell like how the journey started. If you don't mind me asking, I'd love to hear how you got into, you're a superintendent, right?
Yeah. No, hey, 48 episodes. Nobody has ever thrown that back at me. Like,
Really?
no, man. You can tell you are a podcaster. You know how this works. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I've always kind of a lot of the same things you're saying. I've just always loved kids, and that blend of like loving kids and loving like the leadership role, but yet never thinking as a teacher. And I was a high school math teacher, never thinking I would be a superintendent, that in my wildest dreams. Even a principal when I was a teacher, I never thought that would happen. But like you said, the ability to impact thousands of kids at a time is just, I mean, that is a great feeling. And in my role as a superintendent as well, I mean, principal as well, impacting families, impacting a community. I mean, we're leading our communities through this COVID challenge. I mean, we are like, along with the health department, like the schools and the health department are leading these communities through these things.
Jared, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm truly curious about this. So I just got to seize the moment and ask, do you find ways to stay connected with kiddos in some way as a superintendent? Because I feel like as a principal, I've had to work really hard and be intentional and in some cases unconventional to make sure I'm interacting and that we're creating stuff together. I can't imagine how you would even do that.
So gosh, these are great questions, man. So I definitely try. We're not a huge district by any means. We've got 3 buildings, 1,500 kids total. So when you're only talking 3 buildings, it's pretty easy to get in. And we're talking, the high school is behind me across the street. The elementary is behind the high school. And then the middle school is like a mile away. So we're not talking a long distance to go and visit those buildings and get into classrooms. I will say this year's been very challenging for me. I just feel a disconnect. It sounds really weird, but just having the mask on and not being able to like do like the facial cues to kids that I'm smiling at them and starting those conversations. It's been difficult this year.
It is hard. Like if I'm in the cafeteria and greeting and joking with kids, I can't tell if I'm scaring them and they're crying or if they're happy and laughing. It is hard.
Exactly. And then for me, like, I don't know, you probably know your kids really well. Like I kind of know the kids, and not being able to see the full face really makes me a little gun shy to really like, I think I've talked to you before. I'm not sure, and I don't want to embarrass myself.
I'm the same way. And then when they come in with a winter hat in the morning, when I'm out doing the bus duty thing saying hi, it's like you got like this much space to try to see who it is.
So true. So true. So yeah, I appreciate you asking me those questions. Yeah, it's been, you're right though. I feel like every step up or whatever, you get further and further away from the kids. You've got to be intentional about blocking off that time, about getting into buildings. And it's been a struggle this year. I'm not gonna lie.
I agree on lots of different levels.
Yeah. So, okay, gosh. Well, you got me. I appreciate you asking me those.
Thanks for indulging. I didn't mean to.
Oh gosh, anytime, man.
Derail us. Well, that's one of my talents in life is derailing podcasts.
Okay, so take us back. One of the questions I had was, you mentioned was your first teaching job second grade? Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, technically, I had a couple months as a first grade long-term sub, and that was, as you can imagine, an absolute adventure.
So, okay. So I always try to ask, take us back to that first year. Now it could be your long-term sub experience, or maybe it's just that first year as a second grade teacher. What did you come in, like the high points and low points? Like what were you just rocking at day one? And then what were the things what was one thing that you really struggled with?
Yeah, well, a couple observations and stories. Like I remember the first week, I'd go home each night, and I'm married to my high school sweetheart, so we've been together forever. But I would go home and crash on the floor, and this is at like whatever time, I don't even know what time it was, 5 at night, dog tired, dead tired, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, what's wrong with me? And I think over time you develop kind of a teaching stamina and probably at lots of different jobs. But that was my experience. And I also do think, like, I think the primary grades, what I also noticed was when I taught first grade, I had to plan every minute. And at the max, at the end of the year, you might be able to plan 5 minute chunks. And maybe there's some instances of independence for 5 minutes. Second grade, there'd be times at the end of the year that where kiddos could be more independent for, 10, 20 minutes. Not that you're like going to get coffee or anything, but you could provide feedback one-on-one and the kids can do something. You're not having to plan every minute. So I don't even know where that connected, Jared. But the thing from like taking you back to those days, kind of a funny memory is I've always loved art and design and things like that, where I wanted to actually be an art teacher when I was younger. I just didn't, schools had like one art teacher and I didn't think it was possible to, why would that be me, right? So I ended up being more of a generalist and never regretted that decision. But I've been able to always apply my love of art and design and connecting visually, like whether I'm helping design t-shirts as a principal and probably being like the bane of every t-shirt company's existence. Like, who is this guy and how many rounds of feedback do we need on a fun run t-shirt, right? But it's just a passion of mine and I want it to look good. But I do remember in that first long-term sub job I had, it was like a 3-month gig. April showers bring May flowers. It must have been like starting in April, because I created this bulletin board because that's like what I knew. I didn't know how to teach, but I knew how to do art and bulletin boards. It was pretty good, but each day I would stay late and add to this bulletin board. And it was this scene, raining scene, and I think it may have had some flowers starting to grow or something, Well, you can imagine having some, I did have a little bit of talent creating stuff because of my passion for art. By working on that thing every day, and this wasn't my intent, but over the course of a month or two, the thing was ridiculous after 2 months. Like it was this 3D April showers bring May flowers, like with 3D flowers blossoming off, trailing to the floor, to where the teacher came back probably end of May or something to resume the room. And she was an incredible teacher. But I just kind of remember, and I didn't try to do this, it just happened this way, but like I could see her get taken aback by this bulletin board thinking like, oh my gosh, like she was inadequate at making bulletin boards, when the reverse is actually true. She was like this master, amazing teacher. And I was actually showing like the only thing I was really somewhat decent at. It was kind of this comedic moment. And now I've actually since learned, like, do what matters and spend time on what matters. And part of that is filling your bucket and doing what you're passionate about. So I'm not trying to devalue that, but also, don't spend 50 hours on a bulletin board if you also care about other things, including your family.
Sure. I'm curious. I wrote this down.
Jared, we got to get you a cricket button. After I tell a story like that, I need you to push the button and I want to hear crickets chirping.
No, it was good. It was pretty. I can just visualize. I can visualize this bulletin board. It must have just been out of control. I wish I could see. I don't know if you got any pictures of it. Maybe not. Maybe
I probably do in like my student teaching or first job portfolio. Yeah, I bet there is some.
So the question I had was, where did you go? Did you go by Mr. G back then, or okay? Because Gustafson, that's a tough for second graders.
Exactly.
To say.
That's funny you asked. Like kiddos, oftentimes, even now, like the cutest one I love most, and I did not have the heart to correct this little girl. It was Mrs. Gufferson. Like she didn't get the prefix, she didn't get the name, but we knew exactly what she meant. I'm like, how can I help you? Mrs. Gufferson. But yeah, a lot of the kids, well, right now they call me Dr. G, and that's very easy.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Of course. I was thinking, I wrote that down from when you're teaching. I'm guessing you didn't have your doctorate when you're first year teaching. No. So,
I wanted to call you Dr. J in our pre-talk because it sounds so cool, but I didn't know if
Yeah.
I didn't know if we were there yet in our
Well, hey,
relationship.
anytime, man. I've kind of got all kinds of different nicknames going. So, hey, I mentioned you before the show. Speaking of before the show, checked out your website, and anybody who's out there, you've got to check out Dr. G's website. It's really, I have enjoyed building my website the last couple years, but man, you got an impressive you could spend all day just looking through blog posts and podcast interviews, and just it's real. I mean, all the different things, the speaking engagements you've done. But one thing I saw was you talk about, you've got like these areas of strengths, and it was the very first one listed that had me really interested. And it says one area of strength that you really like to focus on is communication and community partnership. So I just want to ask you to share a little bit about that. Maybe share what that looks like in your role as the elementary principal, how you go above and beyond in those areas.
Sure. Well, a couple things come to mind, like a couple aspects of communication that I try to remind myself of or coach myself to remember. And it's like there's the meet people where they're at aspect. And a lot of that is digital. So just and not making assumptions that everyone's getting your parent newsletter or caring about that sheet of paper or even about that email, but really meeting them in the different spaces and engaging in a way that's meaningful to them. Like to me, that's communication, and that's what the goal is. So like whether like we have a school hashtag GW Greats, and actually there's a sub hashtag for more literacy related stuff. It's GW Reads, but it stands for Greenwood, But that's like one little thing where snippets of learning and insights are shared, and every once in a while we'll have little interactions with parents. Like they'll see something cool happening in school, and will my kid get to do that? Like kind of that positive peer pressure stuff. But overall, like one aspect of communication is just don't make assumptions and just saying something once. That's it's not, communication is not a checklist endeavor, right? And then the second aspect of it that probably has been my most important learning over the last several years, it's like the concept of listening. And I'm sorry, that's not really a fancy mantra or anything, but it's been impressed upon me at how impactful and important that is. And I didn't always used to do it, Jared. Or I didn't see the value in it, or I was too ignorant or green or whatever. But now, like showing up at a teacher meeting or on a phone call with a team member or at a parent meeting, instead of, and I try to be nice and professional, but instead of being ready to counter or share alternate evidence, like, oh, my kiddo is melting down at home. And what I literally used to maybe do would be like, oh, trying to reassure them, we see him smiling. Don't worry, he's happy at school, right? Like that was my attempt at trying to help a situation in a special education meeting. But like how wrong I was. So now it would be listening, to be curious and asking questions and really honoring what their experience is, and trying to, like, that's just a basic truth I've tried, and trust me, I fall short of this as much as I succeed at it, but just trying to do that more and more. And it's really, I feel more fulfilled as a leader. I feel more informed. I feel more responsive. Instead of having the answer, like trying to figure out what questions are important in this moment, right? So that's been a kind of a cool aspect of that. That's probably not even on the website, right?
You got so many blog posts, you probably have talked about it at some point.
Yeah, it's probably
I'm guessing. What about, with community partnerships? We hear a lot of it this year's been a lot different, obviously, but just really making sure there is a strong relationship with businesses or the community. Is there you've been doing this for a while, any tricks that you've picked up? You talked about kind of the growth you've seen with the listening. Anything else that you could share about specifically with the community partnerships?
Yeah, well, anecdotally, and this is just off the cuff, but I was trying to reflect on, like, what do we do? What do I do? I think probably when I was just starting out, I either would go all in on one community partnership if they reached out, or if it was already in existence and you just kind of think, we're doing the community partnership thing, right? Or I would hit delete because I'm overwhelmed and maybe just assume all inquiries are not helpful, or I'm too busy, or they're selling something. But in reality, what I've tried to do more, the last several years, I think, is like put ideas and in a hopper and resources in a hopper. And we want to be a resource to our community. So we want to be in their hopper and continually reminding them, like, we're here to help and let us know how we're doing and what are we missing and things like that, but also vice versa. So then when things come up, we can try to revisit and connect dots a little bit and be like, wow, this experience, this effort might be enhanced by someone who's not in the room right now, but they're down the street running a business or working at a business or things like that. So that's kind of like I said, off the cuff reflection of how things have evolved a little bit with community partnerships.
Awesome. One thing when I noticed when I was at your website, I spent a lot of time there kind of preparing, the word creativity pops up all over the place. I think at one point I searched for the word create and I saw it like 13 times on one page. It was all over the place. So one thing you talk about is, or one thing that I hear a lot of is, we want to see more creativity in the classroom. We want to see more creativity throughout the building, but actually like making that happen system wide or building wide is kind of hard to figure out. Any tricks or tips for, not just saying we want to see more creativity in our lessons or creativity in the classrooms, but how do you maybe facilitate that building wide?
Yeah. Okay. So first I'll start off and say we have this big banner across our entryway, like when you come inside. And I'm glad you asked because I forgot it was there, but it says, what will you create today? To set the tone for every kiddo who comes through our doors, like that they have magic and they have ideas. And this is a place that we want to connect them to opportunities to unleash and explore and practice and fail, all the things with that creativity. So that's like a teeny, I don't want to say a poster is the answer. It's not, but it is a message that lives out our beliefs. And I think it's also a reminder to us, to the adults in this space, that like that's our promise to our kiddos. It's not just a question, but like that's a promise as far as like strategy or tips and our team's journey. Like I believe that teachers are among the most creative human beings on the planet. And if we pigeonhole creativity to just painting or just drawing or something like that, we probably will lose some people. But like in your case, Jared, like you can be ridiculously creative in mathematics and patterns and making connections and things like that. Like creativity is boundless. So that's my point to say, like teachers have and possess that. So how are we empowering them? How are we supporting them? How are we breaking down barriers and things that actually would impede their ability to tap into that and to bring that magic and opportunities to our kiddos? Because there are plenty of barriers. A lack of time and overabundance of really important stuff that they're mandated to do, right? And I'm doing the air quotes thing. But here's one practical way that our team, and this is a team effort that we came up with, like, I don't even know, 8 years ago maybe. We had conversations about like, how can we create collaborative creative spaces in every room of our school, hallways, et cetera, and not have it be like an art room or a makerspace. And I think at the time we were cramped for space, if I remember right too. So the team, we came up with this concept of mobile makerspace carts. So we have this fleet now that's grown over the years of, maybe 18 to 20 mobile makerspaces with everything like high tech, low tech, no tech tools to support learning and creativity. So draw your own circuitry where pens conduct electricity and kids are turning on lights and creating drawings that are electric. And it's hard to explain, like to 3D printers, to knitting looms, to Play-Doh, to Connects, to Legos. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. But the point is, like, that's part of our commitment, where let's actually get rid of barriers and make this easier for teachers. So whether they're doing a read aloud and a class is knitting quietly, being mindful as they're listening to the teacher, or maybe it's like a curricular support where instead of a FOSS, like a pre-designed kit that, okay, kids, follow step 1, 2, and 3, and you'll create a circuit. But it's more like, all right, because it's a different level, Jared, when they're drawing a circuit and it's not working. And then they have to look at the drawing and see, oh, well, it didn't connect. Like it's just a completely different level of engagement. So that's like a mush of
Love
our
that.
journey. I will quick point out that on the website, bradgustafson.com, one of the most visited and requested pages is our massive mobile makerspace resource page, where I just try to have like a zillion videos and tools and a list and links and pictures and stories, so that any educator who's interested in trying to empower kids to make or set up even a pop-up makerspace in their classroom, where it's just there to support them. So throwing that out there.
Love that. So I know one question I would get probably, from our elementary principal is like, I love that idea. Where are you just using like school funds, district funds? Are you getting grants? Is there any advice on how to, I'm sure you've kind of built that up over time.
Yeah, we built it up over time. We started with 4 carts, and for us, that was attainable. It's like a combination of things. Here were the first 2 things that I can remember. End of the year, every once in a while, not always, but sometimes schools have a teeny bit of money left over, carryover funds.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And instead of, quickly trying to spend it or saving it or just relegating it to how the budget had always been, we were very intentional and communicated with our district team, who was hugely supportive, and just said, we want you to know we want to earmark this for this plan. We're not going to rush into buying everything, but is this okay? And they said, great. So we reserved that funding, and it doesn't matter how much it was. Like, and honestly, I don't remember, but if you have $100 left over or 1,000 or more, like anything matters when it comes to putting a stake in the ground for creativity. So that was the first part. But then we also added a line item in our budget for innovation. And I remember working with our school secretary, and it wasn't much. It really wasn't much, because we didn't, budgets are tight and we had to pull from somewhere. It wasn't like bonus money or extra money, but it was, again, our way of putting a stake in the ground, saying, we have this line item. This actually matters to us. So my confession as a principal is, like, for the first several years here, what I kind of do, and I'm assuming a lot of principals do this, you just roll over the budget that worked. If you get more kiddos or more of an allocation, you look for what to increase. If you get less, you look for where to cut. But we actually made some like leadership value type changes to prioritize innovation, so that when people started coming to me with ideas, the answer didn't have to be no, or we'll wait and see. It could be like, hey, we have a line item in the budget for innovation. Let's talk about options. And could you meet me halfway? And maybe it's like a little bit of a grade level allocation or department allocation to pair with it, or part of a PTA grant or something like that, where again, we were co-creating visions and plans based on just a teeny bit of seed money. And that whole process has evolved over time. And maybe we'll get into that later. Maybe we won't, but that's where it all started.
I love that last few minutes there. I feel like, so we've been trying to teach our administrators, take control of your budget. Like, within your budget, start to prioritize some things. And it's just, having worked in a few different districts, like very few principals will take that initiative to do that. And they'll just kind of, so and you're nodding your head too there, you agree. So I love how you just kind of summarize that, and completely agree. And thought that was
like,
awesome.
Here's another thing. Like, if everyone listening just pictures, what do you want to see a kiddo do and ask for and be and become in your school? And to what degree does your budget support that? And how have you changed your budget to support that vision? And it's not just about reading, curriculum, and supplies, but like another example that's even more recent, we wanted kiddos to come in. If they had a request for a book or an interest in a book, we didn't want the answer to be check in the media center, or no, we can't do that. It's not in the budget. So there was a year that we gave every classroom, I forget how much money, if it was $150, but when you times that by like 34 classrooms, that's a chunk of change. But we made that the priority, so that as kids had ideas, teachers were able to say yes and expand. Really, it was an investment in class libraries and book access, but it was also an investment in student voice and empowering teachers to personalize learning, like putting our money where the mouth is and not just doing either PD or saying it was a thing. Like, we actually made it a thing.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Hey, before the show, we mentioned, like, I feel like 2016 was the year of Dr. G. Like, I mean, I don't know if you realize this, and it sounds like you're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that. But you were the Minnesota Principal of the Year in 2016. You released your first book, Renegade Leadership, in 2016. You started your podcast and your blog in 2016, from what I can tell on your website. Where did all this we talk about creative, where did all this creative energy just come out from in 2016? Like, what happened? And maybe you were doing stuff before then, but it seems like that was the perfect storm of all just you doing all these different things. So maybe talk, how do we get to that point?
Yeah, so here's the story behind the story, Jared. Couple things, and you and I chatted a little bit about one of these things, but I was blogging before then. I just rolled over to a new blogging platform, so maybe it appeared that the blog just was born in 2016. So there are other materials out there, and then the podcast. I actually started with a friend a podcast before before Unearthed, and for the life of me, I can't figure out what it was. Right when we hang up, I'll be able to tell you. But I ordered a slew of T-shirts. I mean, we were all in on this podcast and this concept, and we recorded our first show, and T-shirts came, and then we realized we were terrible, and the concept was not helpful. It was very gimmicky and not very substantive. And the guest was amazing. So we felt terrible. Like, geez, we just had this really talented educator on, but we were terrible. What do we do? And we just had like a heart-to-heart with the producers at BAM who push us and challenge, like, how are you going to help? How are you going to make a difference in the world? Like, what's your focus going to be? And we're like, geez, we can do this, but we just needed to be a little more intentional about it. So then in 2016, the podcast was reborn as an actual real podcast that hopefully is helpful to school leaders, right? So, and then, mentioned some of those other things, and those were like unexpected blessings and just really cool things. But the work that our team has done consistently over the years, Jared, has always been happening. Like I mentioned, the mobile makerspace carts, and just people and teachers' commitment to like helping give kids a space to invent the future.
Sure.
And if some of that started getting recognized, because our school, like not me, like even the principal type awards, like in your role, like principals are nothing without the team, and like we are literally nothing. And so really our team is incredible. But like, here's an example of something, and it's like one of my favorite moments as a school leader, but that I think just epitomizes how when a team consistently shows up and tries to do the right work and learn and grow, like really good things eventually happen, even if no one else knows about them. But I walk into this 5th grade classroom and I like stumble, it's messy, and I stumble on this one girl is working on like with popsicle sticks and magnets, and I'm thinking, okay, this is cool. They're making stuff. But then I talked to her. I'm like, hey, what are you making? What are you building? And she explains, and I won't be able to say it as coherently or eloquently as she did, but it was something along the lines of, oh, I'm inventing a fuel-less hydro highway system using magnets. And I'm like, what? And then I look again at what she built. Sure enough, once she told me what it was, I'm like, that you are doing that. And it was this highway of magnets with a vehicle that was propelled and floating above it a teeny bit by magnets. And I'm like, dang, your teacher is awesome for giving you this space and the tools and the opportunity. And that's just like a microcosm. Like, maybe I blogged about that or not, but I don't even know. But like when stuff like that happens every day, like teachers who are invested in teaching kids to love to read and to create and to be better friends and to regulate their bodies and emotions as they're just starting school. Like when that happens every single day, we could probably pick a given year where things are going well, but we know that like it happens over time. And I think that's what our team has tried to do.
Awesome. So, hey, you've written 2 books. The first book in 2016 was Renegade Leadership. The second book in 2018 was Reclaiming Our Calling. And I told you before the show, I usually try to read a book of the guest I bring on before the show, so I can reference and ask some questions. I apologize, I didn't have a chance. So I'm gonna
Jared,
let
I
you.
had my quiz already. I was going to give you a comprehension quiz and points based on
What?
your responses, but you're off the hook. You're okay.
Well, I know you're an avid reader. I'm an avid reader as well, and I was hoping. So I'm going to use this time. I'm going to let you share, a couple minutes about each book, and once we get done here, I'm gonna order one or the other, kind of
Okay.
depending on which of the two kind of just speaks to me. So why don't you share a little bit about both those books?
Got it. I'm going to quick curveball since
Okay.
you love reading too. I just finished reading Alan Gratz's Ground Zero about 9/11, and it's a book I think actually written for sixth grade, maybe under sixth grade and up, but as an adult, so powerful and just it
Really?
completed me like it. Anyway, so I'm going to give you that as a bonus answer. But thanks for asking about my books. The book talk, and then you tell me which one. You can grade my book talks based on what you decide to buy. But like Renegade Leadership it's like a guide and for creating innovative schools for kiddos. Okay. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and
Sure.
the heart and the DNA of that book is this thing called the Renegade Code. So basically, collaboration, ownership, digital connectivity, experiential learning, all underpinned by relationships. But it's not just on how to implement and have kids interface with the code and learning experiences. It's also like a leadership lens where when I'm planning meetings, how can I, and the book helps with this, how can I dial up aspects of the code to have this meeting be more effective and engaging for participants? Like how could I make this meeting more collaborative? Or how could I increase attendees' ownership of this meeting and the learning outcomes? Because it's probably unrealistic to try to dial up all the things. But as leaders, we can dial up one or two of the things and learn and see the results and grow from there. And it's not just meetings. That was kind of a lame example, but like really everything we do, school communications, community partnership, et cetera, et cetera. So that in a nutshell is Renegade Leadership. It's how to create and lead innovative schools. Okay.
Love it.
Reclaiming our call. So you may have noticed a tech emphasis in that first book, although I articulate that innovation is not just a technology thing, but certainly there's a digital component to that work. Reclaiming our calling, on the other hand, is like it's grounded in the power of story. So there's kind of a unique story that goes throughout the book. And it's about like seeing people, seeing kids, about the core of this work and why we get up and why it's hard and the competing forces that we might face, whether they be testing in a way that's like damaging kiddos, and how to like put a stake in the ground, the things that we think are core. So I have at the heart of Reclaiming Our Calling, there's like four circles, if you will, or to get to the core, like a rock, to bore down into it. At the very heart of it, it's transcendent learning, or learning that lasts. Like that's the point of this work. As important as relationships are, we also need kids to learn things that matter and that are meaningful to them, that they'll remember, right? Now, relationships are part of the core because that helps get them there. Relevance is part of the core. And I go into the things that are at the core, at least for me. And then I invite readers also in to talk about like, what is core for you? And there's a quick story. I was doing a keynote or a workshop in California one year. And I was talking to people, we were doing these analogies, just an activity. Like I give them a bunch of pictures, they work in groups, they create an analogy for education. And one of the educators, there was a teacher, and she volunteered to share. Her analogy was this escalator, and like she wasn't crying, but you can hear when something's like when someone's struggling a little bit. She shared that sometimes teaching feels like an escalator, but not going up it. It's like the treads are crashing down at you. And as a principal and as a presenter, like that moment to me was really powerful. And I do write about it in the book, and I kind of connect back to it several times. Like, how can we make this work? How can we flip the switch so that we are all going to where we want to go for kids, and that's reclaiming our calling. So now I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm super curious, and it might just be personal, like where you're at in life right now or interested in. But which of those two sounds like something that might be more helpful in your role as a superintendent?
So as you're talking here, I'm behind the scenes. I'm on Amazon. I'm doing the look inside.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of just like, as you're talking, I'm just kind of scrolling through the chapters, looking at the outline. I'm kind of gravitating towards reclaiming our calling. Just a couple things that caught my eye were first of all, there's a forward by a student, it looks like. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And just the way he, like the first couple of sentences, I think it's a male, said, "This is so cool." I saw that. And then I saw you had a little bit about, and maybe it's similar in Renegade Leadership, but you talk a little bit about soccer and your connection to soccer. I'm a huge sports fan. And I kind of am intrigued by how you tie that to leadership and education. So I'm kind of leaning towards reclaiming our calling at this point.
Got it. I got to tell you a quick story that's so cool about the kiddo who wrote the foreword for Reclaiming Our Calling. So we actually also asked his mom to share a preface to the foreword, just because sometimes seeing something through a parent's eyes and then through a kid, like that's so powerful. But when in kindergarten in our school, like all kids, but he had some very unique talents that his teachers invested in over time, like writing and illustrating, things like that. And each year his teachers did different, really cool, powerful things. So to the point where he was writing books, we'd have him in the media center and he had a wait list for his books.
What?
Like how cool is that? A fourth grader has, like, kids are requesting his book and it's out of stock. But so then when I was like speaking, sometimes I would share little stories about him, and I would say, and I would predict, he is going to be a published author someday in like a professional sense, not just at our media center.
Yes.
But now it's funny that he, even sooner than anyone expected, he's published in a sense just from writing that awesome forward. And for people who might check out the book, Dave Pilkey, the graphic novel, like Captain Underpants, Dog Man, like books that kids just love and sometimes just fall in love with reading with those books. This kiddo is a huge fan of those books, so he started writing in that graphic novel drawing format. So his foreword includes, a graphic novel type format too, which is just so cool. And he's long gone, he's not in our school, not long gone, but he's doing continuing to do great things at a higher level now. So.
Well, it's ordered. It's going to be, I got Prime shipping. It's going to be delivered by the 6th, by this Saturday, it sounds like. So,
well, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's helpful.
I'm really looking, I'm not just saying this. For those of you listening at home or watching on YouTube, you just check out the whatever you can preview the book, or you look inside, and there's a lot of just cool, unique things in both books. So check it out. Again, Renegade Leadership, Reclaiming Our Calling, 2 great books. It's got great reviews too, 5 stars across the board there. So,
hey, Jared, so one quick fun thing, both books have some really cool like video resources and free book study stuff on my website. The Reclaiming Our Calling one, as I was developing that guide, like I really wrote it through the lens of A, what would be helpful, but B, what would be so fun? Like if I were in this book study, what would I want to talk about and listen to? So it is, I think, pretty unique too. So be sure to check out the website and you might get a kick out of some of the questions and activities that go with it.
I cannot underestimate how cool his website is. There's so many resources there. You've got to check it out. Tons of cool stuff. All right, I'm behind time here.
Sorry, I have that effect on people.
No, you're good. You're good. So I might, you know what? I got 2 more questions kind of on the leadership side, and then we'll go into some personal growth stuff. Cool. So what is one thing? All right, here, and I don't think I woke up this morning, I was like, I want to add this question. I'm trying to find questions that are just killer questions. So let's try this one out. What is one thing that separates good administrators from great administrators?
My visceral response is that great administrators listen and are willing to admit when they're wrong and be vulnerable and just approach situations with curiosity. instead of knowing or just banking on their past experience solely.
I
That's like the next level.
love
That's
that.
where I'm aspiring and trying to get to, Jared.
Well, I'm kind of hearing a theme in some of your answers, like the listening, you know, I don't know if I want to say being open to criticism, but I completely agree. Reminds me kind of a Jim Collins level 5 leadership, you know, having that, just being able to, being modest and being able to accept that feedback. So
I think so. You just highlighted some even a better answer than I had. Like that's accepting criticism or feedback, even accepting or pulling feedback from criticism. So like where I'm trying to get to in my life is even when someone presents something to me, like a criticism in a kind of a cruddy way that hurts, like oftentimes there's truth in that that I need to hear. So before I build the wall and say, oh, they shouldn't have done this or that or said it that way, it's like what are they trying to say? And you know, trying to assume good intent. And I've learned so much by doing that. And I know it's that's a really hard thing to do, but that'd be like another thing I would add just
awesome.
based on what you said.
That's awesome. Love that. Well, I appreciate you giving me such a great, I really do agree with what you said there. The next question kind of, this is your typical, okay, but what advice do you have for aspiring administrators?
Oh my gosh. I guess like first and foremost, it all comes back to kids and keeping it that way, but don't lose sight of how it also comes back to teachers and parents, because you know, you could win the hearts of kiddos and try and make the best decisions for them, but if teachers are suffering or if parents aren't understanding or invested in that or feeling supported or heard, like it doesn't work for kids. And that's actually the biggest difference. I used to be 100% child-centered. I still am I try to be all about the kids, but I have more on my radar, like how will this impact families? And what am I missing? And also, like, what do teachers need me to be asking right now as well? And by trying to dip my toe in those waters, I feel like we get more traction for the work we actually want to do with kids and for kids.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, I'm going to move on to the these are the quick hitter personal growth type questions. I've got one or two other questions that have come to my mind as you've been talking. I want to, there's kind of random, but I want to ask you. So in case you're joining us late, episode 48, Dr. Brad Gustafson, from Greenwood Elementary in Minnesota, right? I don't know if I said now it's on my head. So first question, if listeners were to visit your city, and is it Plymouth, Wayzata, somewhere in that area, right?
Yep, you nailed it.
Okay. So if they're to visit your area, and I haven't looked at the Google Maps if you're near the Twin Cities or not, but where's one place you've just got to check out in your neck of the woods?
A family favorite of ours is Honey Mackey's ice cream. They also sell really good hot dogs, but it's homemade. Like this is the real deal. They make the stuff ice cream, and they're always out of this flavor, partly because I buy it so much, but it's very popular. It's called Cookie Crazy. So if you go visit Honey Mackey's in Plymouth and get ice cream, and you happen to see Cookie Crazy on the ice cream board, because usually they have like 20 flavors, don't hesitate and order it right away, and you will be so glad you did.
Okay, so you are, it looks like you're in the western suburbs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so just north of Minnetonka there. Awesome. Okay, I love ice cream, and that, yes. Okay, I'm awesome. That's a great recommendation there. Okay, next question. What is one up to $50 purchase you've made in the last year that has made life easier?
I love fishing, so it's got to be something related to that. I'm going to cheat a little bit because I think I had a $25 gift card. I bought some waders, so they were probably like $75 on clearance. But you know, when I'm doing docks or needing to get in the water for random things, like those are money in the bank. Before my waders, Jared, you're going to laugh. Like I would put garbage bags up to my waist or whatever, you know, on each leg and like duct tape them or fasten them. And it was so ineffective and gross because water gets in and leeches and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go with the waders.
So
Is that the worst answer you've ever had to this question? It's gotta be.
I've had really bizarre, like, I don't know if bizarre is the right word, but like random responses. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not a fisherman, so this might be a dumb question. Is there a brand of waders? Is there different types? Like, is there any specifics that you'd recommend?
Yeah, well, you kind of get what you paid for. So I probably went lower than, mine may not last as long as I'd hope, but if you get a really good pair, they're kind of expensive. Now, Jared, I'm also going to add, if I had a do-over on the question, I probably would mention like a book, like because I do love reading. So I'm going to be driving home tonight and be like, waiters? Really, Brad? Waiters? You said waiters?
Well, okay. Well, we got a book come. Oh, that's the next question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is one book? And I'm curious here because we've talked about it a couple of times. You've talked about Ground Zero. We've talked about your books. But what is one book, if you could only pick one, that has greatly influenced your life?
Okay, I'm going to follow the rule here, and I'll go to Seth Godin's previous book, even though I'm loving his current one. It's This is Marketing. But it's not a marketing book, at least I don't think. It's about like ideas and helping people. It is so good, and it's kind of changed the way I look at even communicating. So if you're a superintendent or a principal and you want to communicate with your community and help them, This is Marketing actually has insights that will help you be more effective in serving. So that's my zero hesitation answer.
Do you follow his blog?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. He's legendary. I mean, does he have like, he's up there in terms of like the most read blogs in the world, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know all the stats, but I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, he's been consistent.
Pretty brilliant.
For a long time. Okay. What is one phone app that has positively impacted your life?
I'm going to go unconventional here. My gut was to say Twitter, but I'm going to say Brawl Stars. BRAWL, Brawl Stars. So I started, my son recommended it. It's like this live action kind of cartoon fighting game. And it is ridiculously fun, first of all, but I love the bonding of upping our guys' levels and working with him and dual, like sometimes we're on the same team. It's been a family treasure in a really unexpected way. So just playing a game with your kid that they're really invested in has been awesome. Like I tried the Fortnite thing and my son tried to teach me. I was so bad. Like it was so frustrating because 20 years ago, I used to be good at video games. I don't know what happened. Video games have changed, but Brawl Stars.
Okay.
I highly recommend.
Okay, we got to go to, I got two questions for you. One, what was your favorite video game growing up?
Bond 007 was awesome. Tecmo Super Football Bowl. Tecmo Super Bowl. Berserk was an Atari one. I have different ones at different stages, but those are some of the highlights. How about you?
Oh, gosh, I wasn't even planning on coming back. Oh gosh.
What platform did you have or enjoy?
Well, I was Nintendo. I was the Nintendo
Classic?
Well, yeah, the original Nintendo.
Okay.
Super Nintendo.
Yep.
64. So I mean, I love Tecmo Bowl, Punch Out, a lot of the sports games. But here's one for you. Okay. Baseball Stars. Baseball Stars was like the first one, like the way back, like when you could actually like build your, like improve your team. If you play, like if you win enough games and you could like, I don't know if it was you win money, but you could like improve your players. That was one of the first games where you could actually like over the course of a season, like your players.
Is that the one that had players had biorhythms? Do you remember?
Oh gosh.
Because if it's the same game, I was obsessed with it, and we're talking the same time period, so it could be, but there'd be days where players would be on fire because their biorhythm was high. I made up like the stat book. I get obsessive about like almost everything that I do, but I would track my players and I would jot down teams that had the highest speed because I would try to steal bases a lot and develop that in people. I bet we were like in opposite, not ends of the country because we're pretty close, but we were probably in our basements playing All-Stars baseball on the same days. And now here we are having a conversation about books and leadership.
Yeah. That's great. Well, and Bond was outstanding.
Oh yeah.
That was
Oh,
like
yeah.
the best like group game by far.
Amen. Preach it.
Okay. My next question, again, another random one. Yes or no, will the US win a World Cup in your lifetime?
Going with my heart here. Yes.
Wow. From not even
women's, right?
I should have clarified. Well, the women have already won.
I know, but moving forward.
Okay. So
you gotta give a hat tip to the women. They have dominated with style.
This is true.
But yeah, I also hope the men can put together a solid program too.
Okay. All right. Hey, what is your go-to item at a convenience store?
Anything like chocolate or cake. Little Debbie's are good. I'm like the cook or the chef in my house, so we'll bake stuff.
Okay. Can you recall a job you applied for but did not get?
Yeah, I applied when I was a second grade teacher. So this would have been my first attempted foray into leadership. I applied to be a high school dean. And let me just say, thank God I wasn't hired as a high school dean because that wasn't me at the time. Like I didn't have the skill set, the experiences, and yeah. So anyway, things tend to work out for a reason.
So at the time when you got that call or when you found out, were you pretty bummed to start, or were you kind of already over it?
No, I think I always invest. I always try to do a really good job with what I'm doing. So I have no doubt that I did extensive research on the position and really tried to follow up and learn. So of course I was invested in it, but it probably didn't take me long, to realize or reflect back and be like, you know what? I'm sure they found someone a lot better, and that's okay. And that's important, right?
So, okay, next question is, do you have a daily routine?
I do.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So at school, it's kind of all bets are off because each day is so drastically different just based on needs that pop up. Like I start each day, after getting ready, like reading a devotional. So reading actually one right now by Tony Dungy, which is really, really solid.
What book?
And then Uncommon Something.
Sure. I mean, he's got a lot of books. I know.
Yeah. I forget what it's called, but every single day I do that. And then I'm actually working my way through the Bible again. Sometimes I go chapters and verses, but this time around, I'm just going through the whole thing. And for Bible readers out there, I'm in Chronicles right now, which is mainly genealogies. And that is like, I'm just hoping to, I know they're important and they actually lend some historical context to a lot of the stories in the Bible, but it's not as engaging as other parts of the Bible, just hearing about all these family lines.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah. When you say that, I remember that chapter and kind of being very hard to follow. And you're right. Uncommon by Tony Dungy. I think that's probably his most well-known. You nailed it. So,
okay. Yeah. It's really, really good.
What is your best? You are ultra productive. What is your best tip for being productive?
I don't know if this is my best one, but here's one I didn't learn until like year 3 or 4 of being a principal. I used to go do observations in classrooms, and I've always invested a lot and feel like it's super important. But I would take running records and notes, and then I would go back to my office in the evening and work on writing the observation and write-up. And the whole process for every single observation, that took me hours and hours and hours and hours, and it wasn't realistic. Like, because you don't just do one observation in a week, right? So I'm getting home at ridiculous times. I'm always getting interrupted is not the right word, but there's not a lot of protected writing time unless it's late at night. So what I changed, because no one ever told me a different way, but somehow I stumbled into it. I'm like, why am I doing all this extra stuff? I can give really meaningful feedback and do some of the running record stuff right in the observation. So I try to do the write up during the observation. And even if I need a little extra time, I'll either stay in the room or just go in the hallway before I go back to my office. And I feel like I'm giving the same, probably even more meaningful feedback because it's fresher, but I'm not spending like 7 hours on every single observation. So that for me was it's allowed me to invest in people and feedback in different ways that are even more meaningful instead of all that extra time. So I don't want to misportray this. I invest a lot of time and it's super important. I just think I'm approaching it a little more efficiently.
Yeah. Okay, you've got 2 books, you got the podcast, you're invested with the family, you've got obviously have a very important job. What is the one biggest goal you're focused on right now?
I am focused on growing readers and learning how to be a leader who helps kids not only understand and learn to read, but be super motivated and have authentic experiences with reading. Like that's one of my biggest passions right now, partly because like I've learned over my career now, and it's just like a truth that's constantly beating in my ear and heart. Like we can teach them everything. Once they know how to read, we can work with them on you name it, different passions and topics and conversations and even media literacy so that they can begin to learn and discern things that they're consuming and reading. So that's like my biggest thing and work in progress right now.
Okay. Hey man, we're at the end of the show here. I promised you an hour. We're about an hour 5. So is there anything, we covered we covered your website, your books, your podcast, School Leadership on Earth with Ben Gilpin. Is that correct?
Yeah, Ben is such a good guy and leader. Yeah.
So make sure you go over there and listen to that. It looks like it's on iTunes, Spotify, all your podcast providers. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure the audience had a chance to know?
I'll just share kind of a random thing connected to my passion, like a switch that flipped for me several years ago based on awesome teachers that I get to work with who were talking more about books they were reading. Like I used to be 100% invested in reading PD only books, professional development books. Once I started also reading books our kids are reading, it's taken my relationships and appreciation of literacy and reading to a whole new level. Like even today, I'm in the lunchroom asking kids what they're reading. They're asking me. And finally, I'm actually able to talk about books that were written in the last decade, whereas it used to only be like The Giving Tree. Or, I had my go-to books that I would read in classrooms, but like I would just encourage people to consider, if they're not already, like checking out some of the books that are being released right now, because it's so cool now when kids will come up to me and ask for book recommendations. Like that's a level of the relationship that I never saw coming, never thought was possible, but it just took me reading a little bit differently.
Cool, man. Hey, so I best place to follow you or connect with you if they've got follow-up questions. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I think there are 2 ways that work well for people. The website is bradgustafson.com, and there's lots of resources like that are ready for you. But also there's some contact info, and then Twitter is super accessible too, like at Gustafson Brad. And if you say hi or tag me in it, not just follow, but like say something, then we can follow each other and stay connected.
He's got a huge following on there. I'm looking. You just crossed the 30,000 followers mark, which to me is pretty darn impressive there. So you got a huge following there. But thank you so much. You like I said, you had a show. You were doing another podcast before this recording. You've got lots going on, but appreciate your time, Brad. Again, this is episode number 48. Dr. Brad Gustafson, principal at Greenwood Elementary, #GW Greats. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Jared, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, appreciate it. And hey, if you enjoyed the show, as always, make sure to subscribe and drop us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That helps. I threw out a Hail Mary, Brad. I don't know if I throw a Hail Mary to somebody very, very, very famous. I mean, I feel like you're kind of getting well known too. But they said, hey, come back to us when you have 1,000 5-star reviews and we'll talk.
1,000.
A
Woo!
1,000.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I got a ways to go. So so if you could help me out there, that would be great. We just got like 900 and some to go. So
Absolutely. What are you at?
what's that? How many?
How-
Well, what did I say? You need 1,000 to get.
yeah.
I think we've got like 20 or 25 or something like
Okay,
that.
nice. That's solid. Okay, let's definitely build on that. So you'll tag me when this is released, and that will maybe I can help with that too. Like this is a fun conversation. How could anyone not throw 5 stars your way, right?
Well, yeah, we try to have a good time. I try to mix it up a little bit. And again, just lighthearted and
Yeah, I love the ice cream. Well, you didn't ask about ice cream, but just like the hometown type question. That was super cool.
Well, a lot of people go through. I drove out of my way to the western suburbs to go to breakfast one time. I was staying up north in a cabin up way up north of Brainerd. And it's good to have those little tips. So many Midwest people go to the Twin Cities. People love going up fishing in the north. You probably know that, land of 10,000 lakes. So I just remember driving. I love the Pancake House. And
Yes.
there's one over in your neck of the woods that, so
It's amazing.
if I know of a place to go, I'm going to be going there. So I will most likely, and what was the name of that ice cream place again?
Honey and Mackey's.
Okay. I cannot forget that.
So honey and the and sign and then MACKIES. And I'm
Okay.
telling you, if you are in the neighborhood, do yourself a favor. It is solid.
Okay. Well, awesome, man. Well, hey, I will let you get going.
All right. Great to connect.
And great to connect and keep doing great work, man.
All right. Let me know how I can help you out in the future. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Yep.